Season 3 off to a great start. It's got some creatures here in Monastery Swiftspear, Soulfire Grandmaster, Seeker of the Way, and Goblin Rabblemaster, and then a lot of spells, some Mardu Charms, some Lightning Strikes, and Wild Slashes. We talked about Wild Slash being a card that's not seeing a ton of play right now, but it's good in this matchup, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is a very aggressive take on the strategy, and Jeff is much closer to a 2-color deck that's just touching a little bit of black. The main deck black cards here are Mardu Charm, Murderous Cut, and of course, Crackling Doom, but otherwise the threat base all red and white cards.
A Seeker of the Way is where Hoogland does start things. You see Chris not play a second land. His first land was a Mountain. Is he actually playing Green Red Devotion? Yes, he is. He's on a mulligan to 5.
Yep.
Jeff will play a copy of Soulfire Grandmaster. There's a Temple of Triumph. Hoogland down to 18 right now. Going to leave that card on top. VanMeter will take a draw step. That's not going to get the job done either. Here's the Goblin Rabblemaster. One of the things about Mardu, especially with Jeff's build, he's not the Dragon version. He's a much lower to the ground version. He can get the games over with very, very quickly.
Yeah, his build definitely punishes people on stumbles in a way that most of these Mardu decks do not.
Temple of Silence with the top card to the bottom. VanMeter will take a draw step. Chris going to pick up his Mountain and go home.
That was great from Chris because he drew Wooded Foothills. In theory, that gives him a shot to operate.
The most minor of hopes.
Chris knows he's dead, and Jeff may not necessarily know what Chris is playing. He only saw a Mountain, which is not really Chris's core strategy. He's a Green Devotion deck.
And you know, now it's which green deck is he playing? Is he playing Green Red Dragons, which he's known for playing, or is he playing Green Red Devotion? We know, of course, that he's playing Green Red Devotion. So we'll take a look at the sideboards here as Jeff does win a very, very quick game number 1. You'll find that Chris does have 2 copies of Hoogland the Spirit Dragon, a Nissa World Waker, a Den Protector, 2 Plummets, 2 Arbor Colossus, 2 Hornet Nest, 3 Annihilate Disciple, and then 2 copies of Barrage Boulders.
I think the Planeswalkers are pretty well suited for most matchups against Mardu. You know, they're often a little bit slower at attacking. It's pretty easy to defend them, and they generate a lot of value. So I think the Nissa and possibly even Ugin comes in as well here. I also like the Den Protector and the 2 copies of Hornet Nest.
For Jeff's side of things, what's he working with? Is he actually a land on the sideboard?
Jeff gets real fancy in the sideboard here. A Temple of Silence, a Read the Bones, 3 Elspeth, 2 End Hostilities, 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Glare of Heresies. He's doing a full swap.
Sure.
And I think that Jeff's strategy is essentially he's either presenting close to the same 60 in game 2, or he's completely converting his deck. This seems like a great matchup to be converting, assuming that he knows that Chris is on a Green Devotion deck, because his ground pound strategy is not very good here. Chris invalidates the ground very quickly, and Jeff's threats are just too anemic. But swapping into End Hostilities, Elspeth, Anger of the Gods, Thoughtseize, assuming Jeff knows what he's up against, I think that conversion's excellent here. You're probably going to see him dump things like Monastery Swiftspear and Seeker of the Way, maybe some of his low-impact removal, and just become a Mardu control deck.
Very interesting stuff here for Jeff with the full swap. See, Chris sees this coming.
I love the swap in this matchup.
Okay.
I think that what you saw in game 1 was an aberration, and of course, Chris didn't cast a spell. You can win however you want at that point. But I think if Chris has a functioning 7-card hand, Jeff's plan of attacking on the ground is really hard to execute, but swapping into a deck full of sweepers and Elspeth and spot removal, that's a great recipe for this matchup.
These players getting ready here for game number 2. We will talk about the Spring Creature Collection here with Star City Games. We've got sleeves, we've got playmats, we've got dice bags of some of our favorite game night creatures. Of course, the bunny, the bee, the kitty cat, and the Delver of Squeakerets. It just rolls off the tongue now. It's simple, it's easy to do.
We've gotten used to it. Yet we have the parody collection and the 3 from the previous season. This is all available on card sleeves, playmats, and dice bags. You can head over to starcitygames.com/creature collection, order your items today, or head over to our dealer booth at any of our opens or any Grand Prix that we're vending at.
We get ready here again for game number 2 between Jeff and Chris VanMeter. Good to see Jeff back. I haven't seen him that much this year. We saw him quite a bit last year, but, you know, given that he lives in the Illinois area, not much of a surprise to see him here.
Well, you know, the last couple of years he's been grinding, and this year he's attended much fewer events, as you mentioned, but he's made them count. He was in the top 8 of our first Modern Open in Baltimore. He won the standard IQ in Columbus a couple weeks ago, and those IQs are a lot tougher, the ones that are attached to invitationals, because you have a lot of people who maybe even made a deep run in the invitational and are still competing in that event. So a win there, and of course the top 8 in Baltimore, which was a huge Open Series event. Jeff's had some good performances this year. He hasn't played as many events, but he's making them count. 9
Open Series top 8s, an invitational top 8 in New Jersey during Season 3 of 2014 for the 24-year-old from Bloomington, Illinois. Stay-at-home dad with 2 awesome sons, and apparently they're going to be future Magic players. That's always a good idea. I saw him was carrying around one of the youngsters here a little earlier today. He has a master's degree in mathematics, so he's certainly a numbers guy, and manages several open-source coding projects with a focus in Linux. So He's a busy guy when he's not playing Magic.
Yeah, 2 kids and full-time job. I mean, that's a lot.
I can't even handle myself.
Right.
Let alone 2 kids. So it's always good to see him out here playing Magic. He's always doing things his way, too. This Mardu aggro deck, we're used to seeing, as far as Mardu is concerned, dragons in Standard, but he's a little lower to the ground with the Swiss Spears in the deck.
Yeah, this is a very aggressive take on the deck. And that sort of polarization is what makes the post-board strategy so potent here. His opponent's going to be bringing in cards like Wild Slash and Anger of the Gods and things like that, and Drown in Sorrow, based on what you see in Game 1 of his deck, and there may be nothing for those cards to kill Games 2 and 3, depending on how he sideboards.
VanMeter going to lay out his 7. He'll be on the play here with his Green Red Devotion deck. Will he keep or will he mulligan? That's a pretty fast mulligan there for Chris. Does not like what he saw. We'll see if Jeff is able to find an opening hand that he likes.
Not a great start coming off your 2 buys.
Not in love with it. Not in love with it. That's for sure.
Though Chris has had a very good string of performances lately in the Open Series events.
Yep.
And, of course, 2nd place at the Invitational a couple weeks ago, losing to Ali Antrazi in the finals.
Chris doesn't have much to complain about. Good performance at Grand Prix Charlotte, too, with Amulet Bloom. I believe 11-4 was his final record.
Yeah, I think a money finish.
Yeah, so nothing to be unhappy about for him. Of course, his Invitational top 8, 17 Open Series top 8s as well, with 4 wins. One earlier this year in Syracuse with Green Red Dragons. Former college football player, top-rated chess player, and successful Kickstarter campaigns as well for CVM. So I wasn't sure if he was going to come this weekend, but him and the boss made the trip up from Roanoke, Virginia to get their Magic on, which I can certainly appreciate.
Man of many talents.
Indeed.
Football,
Indeed.
chess, product development, Magic, beards.
Yeah, you beat me to the beards. Maybe his best is the beard. He'll start with a Temple. Top card going to go to the bottom. We're underway here in game number 2. Hoogland with just a Caves of Koilos and a passing of the turn. And Chris still having managed. Just a great start to his tournament.
Yeah.
Soulfire Grandmaster.
1 land in play. I believe I see Dragon Lord Atarka. It's pretty good.
Combo deck. There's a Wooded Foothills off the top. That's useful. It's a 2nd land.
It's so tough when you play against Mardu because you just have to imagine there's a sea of removal for your small mana creatures.
Yeah, really for Chris, it's got to be Carry-Added here. I think he'll feel safest with that. He's got a Rattleclaw Mystic. I'd be surprised if that makes it through the turn. And it's not going to. Lightning Strike, which has lifelink thanks to the Grandmaster. Jeff will come in with the Grandmaster as well. But he does not have a 3rd land to play, as VanMeter will take a draw step. That, of course, means that Jeff's hand is all spells.
Yeah,
but
Chris has at least got a shot here. You know, you're happy to see no land number 3 over there, especially with Chris now drawing a 3rd land of his own.
Chris going to play a Courser of Crewfix. Take a look at that top card. It's a forest. Pass the turn back. Someone's found some lands now, as Jeff will take a draw step. Looks like a copy of Wild Slash is what he's found. It'll be a Thoughtseize here from Hoogland. He'll have to take 3 to cast it. 1 from the Caves, 2, of course, from Thoughtseize itself. You see Chris's hand, 2 Dragon Lord Atarka, a Courser of Crewfix, and a Rattleclaw Mystic with a forest on top of his deck.
This is tough news. You can't cut off the top end. Taking the Courser probably does very little here. And I suppose the card's likely to be Rattleclaw Mystic, which is not what you're hoping to take with a Thoughtseize here.
No, not at all.
Now, Jeff does have a copy of Wild Slash in hand, I believe, and he might just say, okay, I got an answer for Rattleclaw Mystic, and I'll focus on trying to wear down these Dragon Lord Atarkas, which I guess is where he's going.
Forest will be the draw step. We'll see the next card here for CVM, which is a copy of Whisperwood Elemental. That's a very, very good one. Chris wants to do next this turn. He could play Rattleclaw Mystic as a morph. He could just play Courser. He's going to start by attacking with Courser. He can play Courser and then another land. I kind of like this play the best.
I do too.
Gain 2 life here.
I think that when you're playing against Mardu, you just had to assume that your small creatures aren't long for this world, and especially giving Jeff an opportunity there to use Wild Slash to good effect if it's in his hand is just too costly on Chris's side.
A Seeker of the Way and a passing of the turn there from Jeff. Whispered Elemental is the draw. Is it a land on top for Chris? It's another copy of Whispered Elemental. Jeff able to dodge that bullet, because if Whisperwood comes down that turn, this game's probably over.
Yep. But I like Chris making an effort there to make sure he got into the next turn with a Courser Crewfix in play.
Likewise.
The second one does not look very good, but I think it's a much better play than Rattleclaw Mystic.
Chris going to play a Morph. It could be anything. That's the thing about Morphs. Could literally be any card.
Could be anything. Well, that's actually kind of the case in this matchup. Could be a Den Protector. Could be a Death Mist Raptor.
More often than not, actually, it really can be anything. But in this case, we all know it's a Rattleclaw Mystic. That's part of the reason Jeff is Wild Slashing is because he can't let Chris have that burst in mana.
You and I know, and the viewers at home know, but Jeff doesn't necessarily know.
There's island number 5.
Yep.
This game got a lot harder for Jeff now. He's already having some mana issues, of course. You see the top card of the deck is Pelucranos. That'll be coming next turn for Chris. Actually, be coming this turn with the Manifest from Wishwood Elemental. So life getting very hard for the Mardu aggro player. So Chris wants to move forward on this turn. I think what he's just weighing in his decision right now is attacking worth it at this point.
Well, a concern that he's got to have here is Murderous Cut.
This is true.
It's black open, 4 cards in the graveyard. And Chris, with Jeff stalled on lands, it's really dangerous to give Jeff any efficient turns mana-wise. So if you're wondering why is Chris thinking about this, it's because it's pretty bad here if he gets hit with Murderous Cut. But he has nothing else to do with his turn, so he's going to do that anyway. But there was some thinking to be done there on Chris's side.
And there is a copy of Murderous Cut in Jeff's deck, too. He does have one of those. Jeff has finally found land number 3 there in Swamp. Crackling Doom in hand. That can actually take care of the Wishwood Elemental, but how efficient is that at this point? We're going to find out. It does trigger Prowess on the Seeker of the Way. And a little bit of life gain action now from the Soulfire Grandmaster.
There's still no attacks to be made, and with Chris's hand as powerful as it is, if Jeff is basically spending his entire turns responding to whatever Chris did the previous turn, Jeff is not going to be able to keep up in this game playing that way. Not to say he has another line of play, just it's going to get away from him pretty fast.
And that's part of the reason why this kind of gameplay is not going to work. Now, Chris has a Dragon Lord Tarka on top of his deck. He also has one in his hand, of course. We saw it a little bit earlier, as did Jeff. But if we play a game like this, the inevitability falls on Chris's side.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the best case scenario is Jeff is answering to creatures that generated value on the way in on his own turn and not attacking. That's a great spot for Chris to be in.
And we can't forget Chris's Manifest is a copy of Pelucranos World Eater. It is face up with the Manifest on it because Courser of Krufix was on the battlefield. So Jeff knows exactly what that Manifest is and knows that I can't block it right now. That would be a bad idea. Here comes another Whispered Elemental. He'll get a Manifest trigger. It's a Dragon Lord Tarka. We'll see what the top card is here for Chris. It's another copy of Whispered Elemental. This is where the Devotion deck is real tough.
Yeah, Chris is not even doing anything crazy with his mana. He's just making his land drops and casting cards that require a lot of mana and effort for Jeff to answer.
Jeff has found land number 4, but it might be a little too late now.
Yeah. And you see Jeff knows even if he kills this Whispered Elemental, he's just playing against another one next turn, best case scenario.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, he loses his entire board to Dragon Lord Tarka.
It's pretty bad news either way.
Yeah.
Another Seeker of the Way. And you keep adding creatures to the ground against a Devotion deck. They don't really matter all that much.
Yeah, Jeff at least making some effort here to stay in this game. He has Stoke the Flames in hand, and what he's just trying to do right now is hope that Chris gets sloppy, attacks too aggressively, or uses his mana before combat for something, and Stoke the Flames plus the blocks with Seeker of the Ways, which will now be 3/3s, gives them some traction. It's a long shot, but I think it's a lot better than him just casting Soak the Flames on his turn and saying go. That's a dead end.
I think got to give yourself the best chance to win.
He's giving himself a shot.
Hope Chris makes some sort of error.
Yep. This is the most rope you can give Chris to hang himself with. That's all Jeff can do.
Yeah. Chris is going to take his time here and analyze the board.
Also, keep in mind, Jeff has sided in 2 copies of End Hostilities. Don't know if it's in his hand, but if he can answer these Whisperwood Elementals, End Hostilities gets him right back in the game.
Yeah, this is true. There's 5 mana. Looks like another Whisperwood. That's going to resolve. Yeah, and I think Chris might just say, I'm just going to go to my end step. I'm not in a rush. If I get to Dragon Lord Tarka, you just lose.
The problem is he may be in more of a rush than he suspects. If End Hostilities is not on his radar, and Jeff can answer these Whisperwood Elementals, there's a shot.
Chris going to sacrifice this Whisperwood Elemental in response to the Stoke the Flame so that Jeff doesn't gain any life from the Soulfire Grandmaster. You're going to manifest Courser of Crewfix. Top card of the deck is an Elvish Mystic. Pass the turn back. Elvish Mystic will be Chris's draw, next turn. You mentioned the Hostilities, 2 in the sideboard.
Now, it would have to be untapped white mana, and there's not a lot of that in the deck. There's 3 copies of Caves of Koilos, 4 copies of Battlefield Forge, the rest of it's temples and nomad outposts and Bloodstained Mires that can't fight white mana, but it is not inconceivable for Jeff to come back from even this bad of a board state.
Jeff going to play a Goblin Rabblemaster and get in with the token. Chris predictably blocks. Take a look at his top card. It's a Forest. 2 triggers from a Courser. He's going to go up to 23. And we might have a Dragon Lord Tarka from hand, as there's an Ugin on top of the deck, and Jeff is done playing.
Yep.
No more of this. I was curious to see if Chris was just going to unmorph the Manifest Dragon Lord Tarka or actually cast one, which route he might be interested in going. We're not going to find out, of course, due to the concession, but I think that would have been interesting to see.
I think at that spot it's just an unmorphing. You just want to reduce Jeff as low as possible, and Chris will probably give some consideration to the possibility of a sweeper. It feels like casting Dragon Lord Tarka there is the play that most likely results in a loss, even if the odds are very, very small. So we don't get to know. If I'm in Chris's spot there, I'm just unmorphing and attacking for a bunch and daring Jeff to produce a sweeper next turn.
And then if he does, you've got a Dragon Lord Tarka as backup.
And an Ugin on top of your deck. Yeah. You're still fine.
These players are going to be ready here for game number 3. Both of them with some mana issues, so hopefully we can clean that up and get a pretty healthy game number 3 between these 2 great players. Number 7 and number 9 on our Season 3 leaderboard. We'll very quickly talk about another great player who had a great weekend in Charlotte. 9th place was Patrick Chapin with his Grixis Control deck. I'm wondering how he came to the build of that deck. I think these books might help you.
Well, there were so many elements of Chapin's deck that were so philosophically sound and driven by good Magic theory. And you can find out more about that in Next Level Deck Building, his great book about building decks. Next Level Magic is also available to improve your gameplay. These are books for players of all ability levels. If you've just started playing Magic, Chapin has a great way of breaking down complex concepts in a way that's easy to understand. And if you're a skilled player trying to get to the next level, well, Chapin, a Hall of Famer, Pro Tour champion, no one better suited to produce this kind of content. It's available on paperback and on ebook right now at StarCityGames.com/nextlevel.
That Grixis deck was a delight.
It was.
I really, really did like that one, I got to tell you. Tasigur and the Angler and 4 Cryptic Commands. If anyone can find a way to get 4 Cryptic Commands in their decks, it's Patrick Chapin, obviously.
Yep.
And it was very good in his deck for what it was worth. Once he got ahead with a Delve card, it just allowed him to continue to push his advantage. I mean, it's really smart deck building.
And you can see other elements of really smart deck building, like some of the most iconic removal spells in the format do nothing against that deck. Abrupt Decay, you can kill Snapcaster Mage. Yep. You got Lightning Bolt, you can kill Snapcaster Mage. So much of the value of the creatures that Chapin is playing is in the context of the modern format, they're very hard to answer. And there's so many elements of that deck that are just really fundamentally sound.
It was a great weekend for him, of course, in Charlotte with the 9th place finish. But the winner of the tournament, Michael Malone, really putting his name out there, qualifying for another Pro Tour. I believe it's going to be his 2nd one now. And that Elves deck that he won the tournament with, I mean, really, you think about it, it's really just a smart deck choice that weekend. With how many people were going after big mana strategies, he was also a big mana strategy, but relying on creatures instead of lands. So a card like Fulminator Mage, Ghost Quarter, Blood Moon, that doesn't matter against his deck.
And we saw a lot of Fulminator Mages, a lot of Ghost Quarters, and a lot of Blood Moons. Certainly more of those cards than we saw, say, Pyroclasm or Grim Lavamancer, or the types of cards that Elf deck doesn't want to play against.
Cards like Whip Flare.
Yep, no Whip Flares. I mean, there was an Affinity deck in the top 4, but did not make it onto the finals.
Really, really good deck choice. And we talked to him after the tournament. He said, well, you know, this deck was doing well on Magic Online. I decided to give it a run, and I just kept winning.
Yep.
I think he won a PPTQ and split in the finals with one of his friends and was testing it, and he just said, no, nothing is really beating me. I hope no one else notices that this deck is actually really, really good. And apparently no one else did.
Something I've noticed about Modern, the last couple of weeks we got to cover it, there are a lot of decks that can kill on turn 4. you can classify them all by what mode of interaction is effective against them. For some, it's lands. For some, it's spot removal. For some, it's counterspell, and so on. And finding the right turn 4 deck, the turn 4 deck where your opponent doesn't have the right type of reaction for it, that's the secret for modern metagaming, I feel like. Or you could just play one of the good stuff 3-color decks and try to play fair Magic, and those decks are fine too.
Also a good option.
Also totally fine. You want to play with Abrupt Decays and Cryptic Commands and cards like that, you can totally do that. But last weekend, I don't think was a very good weekend to be playing the big mana decks, given how many Ghost Quarters and Fulminator Mages and Blood Moons we saw. But there will come a time, I'm sure, when those decks are really popular because people have a lot of Grim Lavamancers and Pyroclasms, but not enough Blood Moons.
That's when you get them.
That's when you get them.
Both players going to take a look at their opening hand here. They're both happy. 7-card hands, no mulligans. Hopefully some lands and spells to operate, and we get to watch some Magic here. As Jeff Hoogland going to play a Temple of Silence, going to leave the top card on top. Chris with an Elvish Mystic, who'll be searching up a forest with that Wooded Foothills as he goes down to 19. Jeff with a Thoughtseize, get an idea what Chris is working with here. He'll lay out the hand for us so you can see 2 copies of Sylvan Caryatid, a Courser of Crufix, a Pelucranos World Eater, and a Whisperwood Elemental, along with a Wooded Foothills. That's the one card he can't take. Pretty good hand there for Chris.
Really powerful hand, redundant on mana. I feel like Jeff has to attack one of the action cards here because he can't cut Chris off of mana. So my guess is Whisperwood Elemental, as Pelucranos in this matchup is kind of just a 5/5 for 4. Not a bad deal, but Whisperwood has more long-term implications for Jeff.
And you're tough to please.
Chris is going to get to that card very, very fast here.
Pelucranos just a 5/5 for 4.
It's a card that Jeff's deck can answer without too much trouble, especially with his post-board setup here. Also, keep in mind, this would be a really good spot. This kind of hand that Chris has, something like Anger the Gods, could be really good. And if he has Anger the Gods, you might see him go for something like Courser Crufix instead.
Jeff looking at least a copy of Mardu Charm in hand. There goes Courser.
And if Jeff is taking the Courser, that leads me to believe he has a sweeper in hand.
Yeah, after sideboard again, he does have copies of and Hostilities and Anger of the Gods. There's a Temple. That top card's going to stay on top. Jeff will pass the turn back over to VanMeter. VanMeter will take a draw step. There's a Wooded Foothills. Caryatid. Pass the turn back. Great time for Anger of the Gods. See if he has it. The answer is no. Soulfire Grandmaster, Temple, Silence. Take a look at the top card here, will Jeff. Top card goes to the bottom from the scry. We head back VanMeter's way. VanMeter will take a draw step. He's found a copy of Elvish Mystic. He was looking for land number 3 there to be able to cast Wishwood Elemental number 1. Would have been a great turn there for him. $24 lands in VanMeter's main deck this weekend.
Well, this is not where you want to be if you're in Chris's position here. Your hand is vulnerable to just a bunch of individual spot removal spells, and because your mana right now is hubbed so much on these creatures, you're very vulnerable to a sweeper as well. Chris's hand does not afford him a lot of play because he's vulnerable to individual removal spells and sweepers.
Oh, there's a Mystic. Here's a Caryatid. All I can do is just pass the turn back.
I mean, if Jeff's got Anger here, I think we would have seen it last turn if he had it, but
he picked up a copy of Thoughtseize. That's what he's going to be casting. You see the creatures there. Whisperwood Elemental and 2 copies of Pelucranos. See what Jeff does want to take with the discard spell. Can't really poke a hole in this one.
Well, you can take Whisperwood and leave Chris with 2 legendary creatures and a lot of mana.
Yeah. Thoughtseize will take care of Pelucranos. In comes the Soulfire Grandmaster.
I think Jeff has Mardu Charm in hand, and so he doesn't care about Whisperwood.
Yep. There's a mountain, pass that turn back. VanMeter will untap, only 2 lands on the battlefield, so he's not going to sacrifice that foothold just yet. Wants to give himself the opportunity to actually draw into more lands at this point.
Exactly. And that, if you're Chris, that's just a bizarre feeling play. Like, he took the weaker card and a legendary creature as his second copy of over Whisperwood Elemental. It sort of points to Mardu Charm being the card. And Chris may go with Pelucranos this turn instead of the, theoretically more powerful Whisperwood Elemental, because just play on that Thoughtseize is so weird.
Now, which big threat does CVM want to play? His draw step again for the turn was a copy of Whisper Elemental. He's going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills finally, go down to 18. We'll see what land he would like. Forest or mountain. Looks like he's, maybe a forest. And look over that hand again. You will go with the forest. Again, 2 Whisper Elementals and a Pelucranos in hand for Chris. I think you're Chris too. In this instance, whatever large threat you're playing this turn, you almost feel like it's a lot to die.
I don't know.
It just feels that way.
I don't know if you feel that way about Pelucranos. I think Chris has sniffed out that Mardu Charm's got to be the card, because that Thoughtseize makes no sense otherwise.
Yeah, he's already picking it up, assuming it's going to die.
Yeah, I think he was assuming that it was going to be Murderous Cut.
Okay.
And that's another reason to play Pelucranos. You care less about that card,
Sure.
But Chris did a very good job of sniffing out that there's just something so weird about that Thoughtseize last turn that Jeff's hand has to have some pretty specific cards in it.
Jeff with a scry here from Temple of Silence. That card's going to stay on top. Now here's Outpost Siege. It's on cons and it's passing the turn back, so now Jeff's got some real catching up to do. Outpost Siege can certainly help. If he has sideboard into the control configuration that we're assuming within hostilities and such, Outpost Siege can run away with the game, but he's got to have that.
And this is such a juicy spot if you're Chris to just say, all right, Pelucranos for 2. It's hard to give up on that play.
It's hard to pass that up. Get Soulfire Grandmaster off the table.
But if you do that and then just follow up as end hostilities, you might just lose the game.
Yeah.
And just spending a turn casting Outpost Siege, that Thoughtseize, these are all plays that sort of represent a lot of strength. If he feels he can take the time off to do stuff like that.
It's really hard with the shields down to pass up on Whisper Elemental, and that's why I think we're going to see Chris actually do this here.
Yeah, I mean, this is the protection he needs from a sweeper right here.
There is Whisper Elemental. He'll get a trigger, a manifest, of course. Pass the turn back. So now Jeff's Outpost Siege got some real work to do. Crackling Doom is the reveal. We can't forget, too, Jeff has 3 copies of Elspeth in his sideboard, too. So he's got some real big mana plays to move towards. He's going to start by casting Crackling Doom. And that helps to take care of Pelucranos. Chris will have to take 2 as well.
Part of the problem that I have with Jeff's Thoughtseize taking the Pelucranos earlier, setting aside whether or not Whisperwood or the second Pelucranos is the most important card, I feel like he gave away a lot of information about his hand with that Thoughtseize because the play is so non-intuitive. And that might work, round 1 of the tournament when you're playing against someone who's not super perceptive. But Chris is going to pick up that there's got to be something pretty specific going on with your hand when you make a play like that.
Mardu Charm going to go after this Whisper Elemental. So this seems as though this was the card that was on Chris's radar. He'll sacrifice that so that Soulfire Grandmaster doesn't gain any life, which is very smart. 4 damage to target creature, of course, the mode selected from the Mardu Charm. VanMeter will take a draw step. Hoogland the Spirit Dragon. Mana check comes up a little short.
This should go without saying here, but a result Hoogland's really tough on Jeff's deck.
And most decks.
No copies of Hero's Downfall. There are some burn spells in the list, but...
So the manifest come across. Now here is Whisper Elemental. You got a trigger, you got a manifest, and a passing of the turn. Jeff will reveal Battlefield Forge to his Outpost Siege trigger. That'll be the land that he plays. Again, has Elspeth actually in hand. 3 of them in his sideboard.
But now he's at risk of just casting Elspeth, making 3 tokens, and then Elspeth dying.
Yeah.
I don't know if he can effectively defend Elspeth without chump blocking a bunch.
Two-headed giant challenge. If you and a partner would like to play some two-headed giant seal, you can sign up now at the stage. We also need 1 more for a booster draft and 3 more for a modern Winnabox.
It almost feels like he's in a spot where he has to Elspeth minus and hope that End Hostilities comes off the deck next turn. Because he's going to fall so low from these attacks that he can't beat the board and the Whisperwood Elemental follow-up.
Well, he's going the soldier route. It's going to go up to 5, pass the turn back. VanMeter will draw a card. He's looking for a land for Hoogland. Well, he
Sort of.
kind of got there with Temple. Man, no, those temples. They are so good, yet so frustrating at times.
Could just play the forest or a mountain, you know?
How much life would you pay to have that enter the battlefield untapped right now?
Probably a lot. Though I'm not even sure Chris would snap off the Hoogland this turn if he could. But yeah, I would like to have the option to do so.
Take a look at the top card here, roll VanMeter with the Scry from the Temple of Abandon. The best card he could find is in his hand currently. That's Hoogland. But he can't cast it just yet. He'll take a look at the manifest creatures, make sure he knows exactly what those are, if they're anything at all. Keep in mind, he left that card on top of his deck, and with Whisperwood Elemental on the battlefield, if it stays here, that card will get manifested. So we can't forget about that interaction.
And I think that's just going to determine Chris's Scry. I think any creature he leaves on top, because he gets a free token he can turn over, and any non-creature goes to the bottom.
You see the blocks here? Soldiers are all going to die. Chris loses a Wooded Foothills. That was one of the manifests. We're not entirely sure what manifest number 1 is just yet. Now there's a manifest. And pass the turn back, will VanMeter. Thoughtseize is the reveal. It looks like a Seeker of the Way was the draw.
Pretty good timing for Thoughtseize.
Yeah. If Jeff believes that Chris has something in his hand.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
these 2
surprised.
points are not free.
Yeah, I
mean,
wouldn't be surprised if he didn't cast it.
I think I feel like he has to. He can block enough this turn where the 2 life should not be the deal breaker. And he saw Hoogland last game.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great hit.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But I think he could certainly craft the narrative in his own mind that that card is a land or an Elvish Mystic or something that doesn't matter.
Yeah, no,
you know?
for sure. I mean, there's no lock that card is significant, but there's a reasonable chance it's Hoogland, and then you're dead if you don't Thoughtseize.
It was very significant. Looks like the Elspeth is ticking down now. Chris is going to sacrifice the Whisperwood Elemental in response. 2 copies of Seeker of the Way here from Jeff. And Outpost Siege is starting to catch Jeff up in this game.
Yeah.
Because now Chris needs a payoff.
Especially paired with Elspeth. That gives Jeff a good source of card advantage and a way to attack the ground.
Chris can take a look at the manifest. Because think about it. 2 Pelucranos, done. Hoogland, done. 2 Whisperwood Elementals, done. Now Chris needs, maybe his other Hoogland, or another copy of Pelucranos, Dragonlord Atarka, something. Now he's got draw steps, but Jeff is drawing 2 cards to turn to Chris's 1. Here come the attackers. They're your blockers. Shrug the shoulders, lose some stuff. Elspeth's going to go down to 1. The manifests, they were nothing. They were just lands. Chris's play is a Hornet Nest, which is not very good right now.
No, not with Jeff turning this into a game about card advantage.
Thoughtseize number 4 there from Jeff found. That's getting exiled. He's not using that one. Up goes Elspeth. The only thing we don't really know right now is what Jeff drew for the turn. And as he is tapping mana right now, it appears that it is something good. Looks like he's activating the Soulfire Grandmaster, and now going to kill an Elvish Mystic. Gets to rebuy there. Gets to gain a little bit of life, too.
And now Chris is beneath the amount of mana required for Dragon Lord Atarka, which is a big deal.
Yep.
Because Dragon Lord could still catch Chris up.
Oh, in a big way.
As bad as this spot is.
There's Nykthos, pass the turn back. Nomad Outpost. That's the reveal of Outpost Siege. And Jeff picked up, looks like, a Caves of Koilos for the turn. So he does have Wild Slash in hand. Now 3 more Soldier tokens. If Chris were to draw a card like Hoogland this turn, he'd be able to cast it. Here comes the Grandmaster.
Gem Protector, also a huge draw for Chris.
Absolutely.
I assume he boarded his copy in.
And this kind of grindy matchup, I'd imagine that to be the case.
Yeah. If Jeff's got anything in his sideboard, it's removal. So just more cards that are powerful in the long game.
The Hornet Nest is going to jump in front of the Soulfire Grandmaster. Looks like we'll have 2 insects on the way. Though keep in mind, if Chris were to draw a copy of Hoogland now, he wouldn't actually be able to cast it because he's 1 devotion short. Everything added up perfectly when Hornet Nest was on the battlefield. That's no longer the case. Only access to 7 mana now. Devotion to green is 2. I believe.
Although the nest doesn't factor into the Nykthos equation.
Oh yeah, I guess I got that backwards. They were even on that turn.
Yeah.
My apologies. We're gonna get a Wild Slash yet again here.
And this is part of the reason that Jeff broke the nest last turn. Is it allows him to do a lot more Wild Slash than he could against just Hornet Nest.
This is Senegos perhaps, yeah. Chris can make a Satyr token now if he'd like. This tournament so far has been kind of a Soulfire Grandmaster Invitational. Saw it from the boss. Now we're seeing it from Jeff, and it's looked good so far this weekend.
It's been great.
There's a Temple. Top card very quickly going to go to the bottom there for Hoogland.
The format right now is a lot of relatively slow decks without that much removal. And Soulfire Grandmaster is going to be pretty powerful in those kind of games.
Elspeth will take up to 3. 9 Soldier tokens on the battlefield right now.
Jeff is possibly able to establish the lock soon. If he draws Bardu Charm, Chris is done. He's never getting into the main phase with a card ever again.
It's true.
Because it's an instant speed discard spell. Not a lot of those floating around.
Yep. You stop him in his draw step. Satyr token will block a Soldier. Xenagos going to bite the dust.
I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but it's worth noting that Chris's deck is lands, creatures, and planeswalkers.
Well, it's about as straightforward
He cannot break out of this if it gets established.
Outpost Siege number 2. That one also on cons. VanMeter. Take a draw. This is part of the problem with Devotion. Some of its draws in situations like this are very good. Others are really not good.
Yeah, Dragon Lord Atarka is still very much live.
Yep.
But it's got to be soon.
Rattleclaw Mystic was the draw. That's not what the doctor ordered. Jeff going to cash in his Wild Slash here. The Morph. And now Chris will pass. We're going back Jeff's way. Wild Slash is 1. Elspeth is 2. Bloodstained Mire is the draw for the turn. So now the card drawing is certainly online here for Jeff. We'll start by sacrificing a Bloodstained Mire. We haven't seen Outpost Siege a ton recently in Standard, simply because of Dromoka's command, but we can't forget this card was very, very powerful in that Standard format with Fate Reforged.
It's another card that's just caught a lot of splash damage as a result of Dromoka's command being indexed. But if you're able to slow the game down and your opponent can't kill it, it's a way to win the game on its own.
Elspeth moving up to 4. 3 more social tokens will join the battlefield. The attacks are rather safe here for Jeff. Carryout is going to block 2 of those things. It's got to be Dragon Lord Atarka probably right now. And Jeff is going to redeploy Elspeth, a play that I like. Get 3 more soldiers out there. And now it's even unclear if Dragon Tarka can actually get Chris out of the situation. And we know he can't cast Hoogland. Well, I think that actually was a copy of Dragon Tarka.
Yeah, I think it's still too little too late. I mean,
think
2
so,
turns
too.
ago, this would have been enough potentially.
Especially with Jeff drawing all these cards, too. Yeah, there's Dragon Tarka.
Yep.
And it's not going to be enough to get the job done. Jeff Hoogland's going to win this match over Chris of VanMeter, 2-1. Mardu Aggro will take care of Green-Red Devotion. And Jeff's tournament's off to a beautiful start. Of course, he did win our Standard Premier IQ at our Season 2 Invitational, and he's looking to win this one, too.
And I think that Jeff will get a lot of value over the course of the tournament of just being able to swap decks. You know, that's an element that's hard to execute in standard decks. We see light conversions from time to time, but his deck goes from a beatdown deck to a control deck in between games 1 and then 2 and 3 if he wants it. And it's very hard to sideboard against those decks. He's going to get a lot of value over the course of the tournament with people just siding in the wrong cards, having wild slashes when the fight's really over cards like Elspeth. And it's rare to have access to that kind of conversion, but Mardu is pretty deep between beatdown cards and control cards, and it facilitates that kind of swap.
And we can see Swift Spear beatdowns game 1 and then Elspeth control game 2 from Jeff's deck. That is certainly possible.
Yep.
And that's where he gets a huge advantage. You mentioned it too. You know,